Council special meeting to order, May 20th, 2024, 3 p.m. at the time and place is advertised. Our second order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd please stand and join us in reciting our Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, councilors. And then Councilor Klein, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can. It's just really quiet on the other phone.
Okay, well, we'll do our best to speak up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And then Council President Kleberg has an excused absence, so he may or may not join us before we're through today. Next up is citizen comments. This is an opportunity for citizens to address the council on agenda items or other items they wish to bring to the attention of the council. Citizens are encouraged to bring operational issues in advance with the mayor, to discuss them in consideration of others wishing to speak. Please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. I don't see any citizen comments today, so maybe we'll just move right through that. Move into agenda item number 4, budget items. First item up is facilities. And Director Barker, are you going to present that?
Yes.
Okay. So just as a reminder to everyone that presents today to speak up loudly and clearly so those at home can hear what you have to say, especially our Councilor Klein. And there's a microphone above you, Director, another one there, and I think one above us here. And with that, I'll turn the floor over to you. Thank you.
Let's see. Oh, there it is.
Got a PowerPoint?
Oh, there. Yeah, I can't see that far.
Try this one.
Can you go to Zoom and share your screen first?
There we go. Yeah, I already did. Yeah. I remembered those 2 steps. It was the third. Mayor, Council, thank you for letting me speak today. I'm actually going to cover the first, I believe it's 4 or 5 topics that you have on your agenda. First thing we'll start with that I want to make note of is this first little picture on your upper left. If you haven't seen social media the last couple days, there'll also be a story on KLEW tonight. Our long-awaited pickleball courts are completed at Sunset Park. We had a kickoff last Thursday with the pickleball club at 8 o'clock. I got a couple games in before getting a sweat up and off to a meeting. But they're very excited. We had about 45 participants show up Thursday during their club time. But the courts are all completed. And just a quick pitch on Sunday, June 9th, because that's about the only time we could find that the park was less busy. At 1 p.m., we will have a celebration event up there for the courts. So if you are available, I'll tell you again prior to that, but Sunday, June 9th at 1 p.m., we're going to have a little bit of a celebration event and check presentation from the Pickleball Club for their donation towards this project to make it happen. So got my sales pitch out of the way.
And that was 1 p.m., right?
1 p.m. on Sunday, June 9th. I promise that it'll be 75 degrees and sunny and slight breeze.
Not a win.
Yeah, not a full wind. We don't want a full wind. No. Okay, the areas that I'll be covering today is similar to last week with fees, but we have 5 different areas that I want to bring up some project ideas, and not all are this year. For example, the facilities, but ones that we're looking at moving forward that we want to consider within a future budget. We're going to talk about the assigned building fund. That's the community park piece. Golf course. We still do have some projects and some equipment that we're looking at over the next couple years. And then within parks, there's a dedicated fund right now in the general fund for some park improvements. and then some cemetery development related to cremation. So I'll pause in between each slide because they're separate agenda points, and if you have any questions on each one of those, I'd be happy to answer those. So on the first slide, the good thing is I'm not showing you any dollar figures at this point as far as what we're requesting for this year, but three major projects that we are potentially looking at in the future. We've been discussing additional or replacement building for the cold mix storage, de-icer type products for public works up at the shop, as well as a covered area for various tires that are stored outdoor currently up at the shop that's used through fleet, and then additional indoor storage area. So this is a larger 4-bay type style shop building that we would be looking at more towards the south side of that facility, if you're familiar with that. The current structure that we have up there is pretty much built out as far as it can be without taking on a couple $100,000 worth of improvements for fire suppression and other needs that are going to be required based on expanding on that current footprint. So that's something that we are discussing amongst the different departments. Again, this isn't a budget request for this year, but something that we're looking at moving towards the future. And is something that really came up when we start talking in the terms of different consolidation options within the city and where things might go. Bert Lipp's Pool.
Okay, I'm going to slow this up just a little bit, Director. Have any questions, councilors? Any thoughts?
Want them now?
On this project, I would,
I have some questions, yeah.
Councilor Lidkey?
I was gonna let you get through the first page, but, you want to do this in fiscal year 25?
No.
Well, then why are we hearing about it?
I'm letting you know for future,
Okay.
looking at future items.
And the,
I'm not coming to, so last year we met in April and threw about $10 million worth of projects at you. We've taken care of close to $1 million of that this year because of funding that you have set aside within the reserves for us to be able to accomplish those things. Until we complete the current study that is underway right now with Clearwater Financial, we don't want to look at some of those other projects. And then depending on if we do look at consolidating some sites, what that may eliminate from that list we provided you last year. So that's why I'm not coming to you this year with any initial requests.
Councilor Lidkey?
so, and then my next question was, as I went through your short bulleted list, I'm wondering, do we not have any space for storage now that we could be using? I mean, tires outside in the sun, like, are we trying to problem solve that with what we have, or is this the only solution? Is what I have written down.
Yeah, we are looking to resolve that with some of the outdoors covered space that we have now that's basically sun protectant. All of those bays right now are over full capacity for what they can hold, but that doesn't mean that we can't take a look at, and we will be looking at that this summer, is how can we consolidate, or do we have materials up there we haven't used in a while, things that we can surplus. So that'll be all part of that process to figure out. There is a current building up there, the cold mix storage building, but it is getting almost to the end of its life, and that's why we're really looking at what do we truly need up there. And again, that consolidation of materials up there, should we continue to hold on to these items that were replacement parts that we may never use, or should we surplus those and free up some space as well?
Councilor Spickmeyer?
Thank you, Mayor. So, Director, in your explanation, so are you thinking this shop building would be funded with the assigned building fund?
I don't know how it would be funded yet.
You mentioned it, but
Well, I mentioned that as part of a different item. I didn't mention it specific to funding the city shop building with the assigned.
So is this something we can add to the deferred maintenance list?
It is.
Similar to,
Yep.
okay.
And it will be reflected within our strategic plan within the department, once we get a fine tune what our true needs are for additional space up there.
Councilor Spicklemeyer.
So I guess to follow up with that deferred maintenance list, none of those are on this list today?
We have some of the, I believe the cold mix storage is on there. But again, since that's gonna be that project could be anywhere between 300 to 500,000. We wanna fine tune that and give you a much better number than throwing that big of a range out at you, once we find out what our true needs are up there.
Councilor Lickey.
Just for a comment, I had written down surplus items. I'm all for cleaning up what we don't need and surplusing so that we can actually see what we need. Because I think we've all done spring cleaning to where you think, how do I live in this house? I need a bigger house. But when we clean up what we don't need, we fit quite well in what we already have. So I'd like to see that done sooner than later.
No, that sounds good. And I'll say on my end, one of those items is, if you remember when we originally put in the aerator fountains down in the ponds over here at the core ponds, when the canoe wave went in, the aerator, we had little mini canoes that were around the aerator fountains. Well, we found that having that floating decorative piece there restricted the flow of the water. And so those are sitting up there. Will we ever use those again? Probably not. If they didn't work in that use, we probably wouldn't repurpose them elsewhere. So that's a good example of something that could be taken to salvage and we receive a little bit of money back on.
I think you could sandblast them and do something with them and sell them to like Bruce Finch or something for one of his restaurants for thousands of
We
dollars.
It would probably be hundreds of thousands, and we could fund all sorts of things. Okay, Bert Lipp's pool. This will be an item that will be discussed with you in early June. Again, no funding source identified on my end. What we really need to figure out is how do we want to move forward, and part of that, Councilor Spicklemeyer will bring an item to you on June 3rd. But because this is a land and water conservation funded facility, like many others, we have to determine a use. Whether it's at that site or whether we look to exchange properties elsewhere, we are stuck with the designation of Land and Water Conservation Fund, which is outdoor recreation in perpetuity, whether it's as a pool or a splash pad at that location, or, like I said, could potentially be converted to another use elsewhere. We need to figure out what we're looking at as far as costs there. I don't foresee us being able to have a plan in place before FY25 either for that project, but it's something that does need to be identified. And then again, related to the some consolidation, looking at those pieces, we've identified in our strategic plan that there may be a need long-term for facility master plan, but until we get all those pieces in place, we are not going to move forward on that project until we identify whether we need a full plan, and if we do, what that might look like.
Questions, councilors? Councilor Klein, are you with us?
Yes?
Super. Okay, no questions?
Nope.
Thank you.
All right, so here is the assigned, I think it's identified as assigned building fund in your agenda. This request is related to funding that was put in place in FY22 for community park development. I believe at that time it was 1.5 million that was approved through the budget. We expended about $250,000 of that in equipment for the outdoor fitness area and for lighting for the basketball court, but that project has not moved forward. So technically, this is not a new funding request, but it is a request to utilize funds that were designated in FY '22 to complete these projects this next fiscal year. Part of the reason for the holdup on that was we had a number of different things happening at that time. That's really when we started going through the changeover in form of government, so we kind of scaled things back and held back in the meantime to complete some other projects. But this is about a 2 to 3 acre development right near where the reservoir area is at, and we did install the parking lot that is there and the prefabricated restroom. So this is the location related to those pieces. So we have the outdoor fitness equipment. This would be the installation of that, the shade structures over the top of that, and then we have a full-size regulation basketball court that would have 6 different hoops, and that would be positioned along the north or the south side of that restroom area, and then we would also be putting in shelter area at that location as well that's reservable, and then all of the amenities related to that, garbage cans, pathways, the concrete work as well, and then the landscaping. In addition to that, there's been a demand for the bicycle playground area, which is on the eastern portion of that property, just north of the southeast corner. So that would be a project that we would put in, and that's for little kids, kind of a little kid bicycle area. So then younger kids have a place in addition to the 5 miles of trails that have been developed within the canyon land. So this is a request out of the assigned building fund
For this fiscal year.
for fiscal year '25.
Counselors, question, Counselor Lickey?
Okay, and I wrote here that we had the outdoor fitness equipment, which you confirmed, correct? Where's that being stored?
Great question. It's under the storage area at the shop.
How much room is that taking up?
It probably takes up a full day
Okay.
of space,
But-
along with the lights.
And then we don't have the basketball hoops, those kind of things, right?
Yeah, no, just the lighting for the basketball court, all the hoops, and any small bleacher area, drinking fountains, garbage cans, those would be ordered as part of this project.
Follow up.
Counselor?
How is it that we installed a parking lot and lighting, but we still need the final design of parking lot phase 1?
So what we call parking lot phase 1, the whole essentially 3 acre site. It's just how we refer to the project name. So phase 1 development at the park, we've been referring to as the parking lot area. Not very fancy.
Counselor Spindler?
Question?
Oh, Counselor Klein, go ahead.
So what did you say, how much did you say this, this project to complete all the rest of it, would cost?
So thank you for the question, Counselor Klein. We haven't put it out for bid yet, but as far as the remaining funds that were approved in FY '22, it's a little over 1.25 million.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not saying it will take all of those funds.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Spickmeyer?
Thank you, Mayor. So Director, last year we had a survey that didn't support the community park. And I thought we weren't moving forward with it. So is this an effort to do a piece at a time, or I guess I don't follow why put money into something that I don't think we were supporting?
Good question. And I guess that survey is how you interpreted it. If you interpreted it as not supporting the project, that's not how I saw it. How I saw it was not supporting the way it was being recommended for funding. A lot of people felt that they didn't want to be hit with a $95 million bond, which I totally understand, and it was going to be phased. But the lack of support from the way I read the results of the surveying was that they want us to try to do as much as we can without the burden on the taxpayer. And I completely can understand that. And so what we've taken away from that is we are going to take, instead of 2 larger phases, we're gonna break pretty much every zone off into a separate phase and create funding sources as much as we can with partnerships, similar to what we've done with adoption of parks or, for example, the pickleball courts. We're gonna look towards our community partners to help assist with the funding development of that, along with support from the Parks and Rec Foundation as well is gonna be a major player in a lot of this. So I guess to answer your question, I didn't see that there was a lack of support for this long-term, but it's just the way the funding was looking at, we knew that this wasn't gonna move forward if we were going to put the full burden on the taxpayer.
Okay.
So Counselor, I can add to that too. So when I came on board, I was not in support of the community park plans that were in place, the funding plans. And so I did not give this a lot of attention my first year or support, although as it says at the bottom, it was included through the assigned building fund. So I knew that. And I think for a year there, we were trying to, at least my understanding is trying to understand what needs to be completed, how much money we have left and all these kind of things. And so this is a project that I will probably support in my budget when it comes to council. I don't view this as part of the bigger ongoing thing. When we made the decision, we did a public survey process, right, to test the support for this project. And they did that and they decided not to pursue it at this time, the larger part. But this one, I kind of almost look at like it's a separate project, but that's just how I feel. But that's consistent with since I first started the city, was that this was not going to be a priority for me. We're going to figure out what's going on with this bigger project, try to separate that out and say, let the people vote on this, because at the time we were talking about cash flowing a lot of these things in our current budget. And we decided not to do that. Instead, what we've done is we've put a little more emphasis, for example, into transportation and some other projects over the last couple of years, so. Councilor.
And I get that and appreciate the comments both. I guess my biggest concern is the use, and keep bringing up this assigned building fund money, is that I think we have 2 or 3 different things that always bring that up, is how it's gonna be funded. I think one of the biggest things we need to do is decide what we're gonna do with the money instead of picking pieces of it out. And well, Councilor Kleberg's not here, but as he brings up, is it this mean we're not gonna pursue, other things we've thought of, fire stations? So to me, I'm not shutting it down, Director. I'm just, what are we truly wanting to do with that money? After a while, it's gone, so that's the driving point of my comments.
No,
So-
much
So I
appreciated.
have to ask, because I forget, and I'll look at Amy when I ask this question, but are there other dollars besides the assigned building fund included in this project? I thought we had some that we have not spent down yet.
Well, I believe Director Barker's request is to use the assigned building fund. He does have within his capital fund, within the capital fund, there's a portion of it that's for parks, a portion for transportation, a portion for library. He does have some funds that are dedicated for community park, but I don't think that there's a lot of money left in that, maybe a few $100,000.
Maybe, yeah.
So it wouldn't be able, because if you remember, that is where he purchased the fitness equipment. So he has been using that money. This year, he's using it towards an irrigation study, I believe. So it's being used in smaller doses, but it would not support a project this size.
Right. Thank you. Councilor Lakey?
So my concern, and I think a lot of times my concern is when I hear that we need to do the final design and we need to put it out to bid, and we approved this amount in fiscal year 2022, we're now into fiscal year 25. Not to rain on the very exciting pickleball courts, but that ended up costing us about $79,000 more than originally budgeted. So I would like to see that we see what it's gonna cost so that we can make solid decisions, because at this point, we're saying, okay, we have 1.2, concretes went up, massively, with inflation, so what is that gonna look like? And can we complete it and get it done in a timely manner? Because again, we bought outdoor fitness equipment, 8 months ago?
It's been about 2 years we've had it,
I think we talked about it,
probably.
it all runs together. That would just be my concern. Cause I know we voted to spend this money, so we need to do it, but let's do it before we're having to go back into the bank.
Thank you, Counselor. Director?
I have no other comments on this slide unless anybody has any other questions. All right. These are items that have been identified in the draft management plan from Corsco. And so I'll just kind of step through some of these. Three capital projects that they're looking at. One is a maintenance building, and this one's to the tune of $235,000. I will tell you what we're looking at right now as we're working on the design for the cart storage barn is we are looking at doing an expansion on the back side of the cart storage barn that would include a maintenance building, which would save some costs for us. Instead of replacing the current maintenance buildings in the same location, this would pull the 235 is if we replace the location of where the buildings are now. And I'd be happy to take you up and look at them if you want to see those, but they desperately need to be replaced. This is a project that's been needing to get done for a number of years and would have never been on the operator before because this is a structure that's owned by the city. But looking at the location of the maintenance building, again, $235,000 if it's standalone, much less expensive. We're working on numbers right now to figure out what type of savings that would be, but it could potentially be $100,000 less if we attach it to the new cart storage barn that we're looking to build this year. So that's just kind of a brief information on that. We currently have no lifts in the maintenance building. Wiring needs to be completely redone. It's just a very old structure that was originally installed in the early to mid 70s when the facility opened. T-leveling is a 5-year program. So what they're recommending is funding that over a 5-year period at $15,000 a year. Bunker refurbishment is $25,000 a year for 5 years. So again, these are the total of $40,000 for those two projects annually if we decide to fund them for 5 years. If it was to be put off, then that request may look as a double or increase moving forward, but those are operating expenses. As we move closer to being able to, be as self-sustaining as possible, these are hopefully projects that we may be able to fund internally through the revenues that come off of the course, but we're not quite there at this point yet. So I say it's a 5-year project at $15,000. In a perfect world, the mayor and I could tell you next year that we're factoring that into the operating fund and would be spent from that, but we can't do that at this point yet. Capital equipment, 2 pieces of equipment this year, spray rig and then a T-mower. One is recommended as a new replacement of a piece of equipment. We have a 4-wheeler up there right now that's being used and it's on its last legs, and then a mower specific for the T boxes is that second request, and that is a used piece of equipment because you're not using it for hours upon hours each day. It's used just for those 18 T boxes, and so going with a used piece of equipment was their thought process that it wouldn't get the heavy use that a brand new one, or it wouldn't get a heavy use, and so used would be suitable, and so to purchase a used piece. I will note, related to capital equipment, there were 4 pieces that were approved for this year's budget. We were able to incorporate 2 additional pieces because we did buy used. And so some of those, 2 of those pieces of equipment that were on their long-range capital equipment recommendations were removed from that list because we were able to get suitable pieces of equipment at less expensive rate.
Question?
Counselor Klein?
For the spray rig, $55,000 seems like quite a bit. Do you have pictures or ideas about this? Going from a four-wheeler to something that big seems like it would have a dramatic impact. So it'd be nice to see what it looks like.
Sure, thank you, Counselor Klein. I would be happy to send out some pictures of that. Obviously, it's a larger piece of equipment that would be much more efficient, time efficient for staff to utilize, but I can definitely send something out on that.
Thank you.
Counselor Spickelmeyer?
Thank you, Mayor. So on this, the T-leveling in the bunkers, is that like a local excavating company does that, or is it some professional company come in, or?
I would have to get back to you on that. It's a very specific process that they go through. So I believe they bring a contractor in that does these types of things, as opposed to it being completed in-house, is what they're looking at doing. Okay. Amy alluded to the Parks Capital Fund. So there's $100,000 a year that goes towards Parks Capital projects. So these are items that we spend funds on as needs improvements within the park system. $100,000 has been built into the budget. I just wanted to identify to you what those 3 projects that we were looking at this year or next year were for. Last year, items that we did were additional synthetic turf improvements, backstop improvements for our ball fields. Another use for these funds, although it wasn't originally identified, is when we have replacement playground parts, like what we'd mentioned recently, the slide to the tune of about $10,000 to $12,000 up at Airport Park came from this project account, and then replacement of playground bark surfacing within the playground areas as that disintegrates. So that's what we utilize this fund for. In the past, we used to have to come to council annually and ask for $10,000 a year. Sometimes it was funded, sometimes it wasn't, just to replace bark. So then the soft material, the fall material was safe within our playground areas. So what we're looking at this year is adding an additional shelter at Sunset Park. It is definitely our most used shelter area. This shelter would be located to the east side of the current parking lot that is at Sunset Park. And there's a little area that sits down below, so it'd be kind of a nice little private area for different parties and uses. We obviously charge a reservable fee for that for exclusive use. And then those funds go into our park reservation account. Cameras within the park system, we're working with information systems and security to upgrade the cameras within the parks. Currently, we work with an independent company that charges us a monthly rate. If we go with the internal system, that would eliminate our monthly rates. So over time, we would gain those funds back, but that's what our upfront estimate is within our park system, would be about $30,000 to add cameras and upgrade our systems. I will note, and I think maybe I put it in there, that we've been very successful in working with the police department and with the videos that we found. Most often with the vandalism, we are actually figuring out who created that and then being able to get restitution for that. So it has been a positive. And we do probably see anywhere between about $8,000 to $10,000 worth of vandalism within our park system annually. So the Kiwanis Park path repair, this is a project that we've been requesting. It's been about 4 or 5 years since we've requested it, but especially towards the north end of the park, we have definitely a severe amount, in my opinion, of pathway that has been lifted up because of tree roots. It's very narrow, and we'd like to go in and be able to rebuild that, at least the northern portion of the pathway. In the past, we've asked for funds to rebuild the entire thing, which would be about $100,000, but this would basically be the section from the shelter in the central portion to the north parking lot is what we'd be looking at replacing.
I have a question then. On the Sunset Park shelter, you said that the rental fees for that go into a park reservation fund. Would you explain that in a little bit more detail for the council so that they understand that? Because we're gonna look at some fees pretty soon too, that they're gonna vote on it.
Yes. Yeah, so thank you. For any of our reservations that are done within our park system, it goes into a separate account that is utilized, again, to make park improvements. Typically, those funds are utilized towards facilities that we can create more revenue off of. So the premise behind it, when it was created about 20 years ago, was let's put in a few shelters, charge rental fees, and then that will eventually get us to a point that we can continue to develop shelters utilizing that fund and not have to request funds through council for that. Those funds most recently have been used for various projects within the park system, whether it was used in 2016, for example, to provide a match for the original development of the pickleball courts. So I think we had $25,000 there that was used. We've used them to develop shelters. The shelter at Sunset Park that's there now was used from that fund. So again, the pump track up at Airport Park funds were used to develop that. So to create separate amenities that are within our park system. What we do within the Parks and Rec Commission every spring is we talk about what funds are available in that fund, and then they're really the ones that we work with to identify what the needs are in the park system and whether those funds would be spent. Typically, we go about 3 years or so before we spend funds, just because it doesn't accrue really quickly. But has been obviously a huge value to the park system be able to have that fund to draw from.
Councilor Forsman?
How long would you say the ROI is on our shelters? How long does it take us to basically get back what we spent?
So we have, I believe, 6 shelters in our park system, and annually we probably bring in about 20,000. And so per shelter, you're looking at probably $3,000, $3,500 a year. So maybe 10 years.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Normal Hill Cemetery.
Councilor Spickmeyer?
I didn't know we already talked about the Kiwanis Park path.
We
I had a
did.
question about it.
Sure, yeah.
So with the upcoming Snake River Avenue projects, there's nothing the city needs to prepare for, as far as the park goes with that new construction work?
So that would be a public works project on that end. This is an interior pathway within the park system. So it would still continue to be there. I don't think what would be developed, if there is a sidewalk that's developed on the roadside, whether that would help settle a need that we have. And I can't remember, thought I heard Dustin walk in. I can't remember and they may not have the final design yet, but they may have that pathway on the east side versus the west side. I'm not sure what that final design is.
Sometimes there's adjustments that need to be made, but
Yeah, there's quite a bit of distance between the road and where that pathway system is right now.
Councilor Lidkey?
Well, to that then, I had a question, regarding where does our path cross into Corps of Engineer property at all? Is there an avenue for partnership there? And then sorry, just before I forget though, but there isn't really direct accessibility for somebody like in a wheelchair, so I kind of see Counselor Spiegelmeier's point as far as making that connection.
So first question, the section that we're looking at rebuilding would not cross over into the core area. The core area pretty much takes over once the slope starts, and that's further to the south from where this repair is being requested. But yeah, we would most definitely, if there's any crossing paths that we could partner with them on, we would approach them on that. As far as connectors, I would love to see with the development of Snake River Avenue, some sort of connection, but I wouldn't want to see that until there's a defined plan for Snake River Avenue, because right now we'd much rather lead people to the north and south parking lots where there's a safe pathway as opposed to dropping those off that need that accessible feature in the center of the park along the gravel area. So unfortunately, it's not easy access, like you said, at this point right now. I'd love to see it. I think I got everything you said.
Yep.
Okay. All right, last piece is Normal Hill Cemetery. So we have had funds going into a project for the columbarium the last few years. Columbariums are not cheap. And just a brief explanation of what a columbarium is it's essentially a two-sided bookcase that has niches for cremation bags or urns to go into that are in a locked section within the wall. What we're looking at is a wall that could potentially hold anywhere between 300 to 400 units. The concept of an ossuary is something that we've discussed recently, and we've had a lot of help from some of our local funeral homes in looking at different designs and what they think may draw individuals to utilize that. So an ossuary is essentially a columbarium, and then the center portion is used just for bags to go into these of cremated remains. So you don't have a particular niche that you would have your name on, but more of a ribbon around the outside, and then the bags would be dropped into a center portion that's all covered. We've looked at mixes of a columbarium and a scattering garden. A scattering garden, we would have essentially an underground tank that bags would be put into, and the cremated remains underneath a garden area. What we're looking at is potentially still doing some gardens, but looking more at the double feature of an ossuary. And so looking at those is about a $90,000 to $100,000. Like I said, we do have some funds that we have not spent the last few years to try to help build that up, but we really need some additional funds to be able to get this put in place. The return on a columbarium, if you're looking at selling the niches at about $1,500 a piece times 400 of those, that's quite a large number and a good return on your investment for a $90,000 to $100,000 cost for the item. We don't have enough funds necessarily to be able to pull out of the perpetual care fund to be able to fund a project like this, as those have been dedicated towards trying to help offset the maintenance of the site. We are limited in inventory for columbariums at the cemetery, hence why we really had a design created for a cremation area around the mausoleum that's on site there.
Councilor Forsman?
Do we have any data on if cremation has become more of the option than regular burial? I can't.
Yes. Right now, we're sitting at about 70% cremation over a standard burial, full body burial.
Okay. Perfect, thank you.
Question?
Counselor Klein?
Would that potential, is it, how much is it, is it 6 acres of land that's potentially, possible to surplus? Could those funds be directed towards the columbarium?
Did you want me to answer that?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, they always could. Any sale of property could be utilized towards that. It wouldn't necessarily have to be from sale of property on site, it could be any property. I believe that would just be something that council would have to identify as a use for it if they listed and sold a property.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselors? That's it. Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Thank you.
1 minute late for Director Johnson, not bad.
That was pretty good. I tried to do my best.
You did.
Director Johnson, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, Dustin Johnson, Public Works Director, here to talk about Public Works Capital. Everything is broken down into the accounts, so I will start essentially with transportation, which is a non-enterprise fund, and it gets a little broken out into grants and allocations, so it's a little bit messy of a slide. We'll walk through all that. The rest of them are a little bit more straightforward because they're individual accounts by water, wastewater, storm, etc. So like I said, starting with transportation, what I've got there on the first slide is the total cost for the projects, and then what portion of that cost is contributed by property taxes. So I will go through this list quickly. I won't give you all of the ins and outs and details other than these are all mostly grants or federal allocated through the STP funds that are allocated through the MPO. So the ADA Improvements and Sidewalk Fund is a fund that started probably about 4 or 5 years ago. It's funded $50,000 by property taxes and another 10 by, I think it's TIA fees or FILO funds. I can't remember which, but total for $60,000. Those are unallocated for a specific project because we end up inevitably every year we come across typically a construction project that wasn't accounted for in a transition into an area. So let's just pick up these couple ADA ramps or replace this sidewalk that's non-compliant. And so we end up using that throughout the year. We don't typically use the full 60,000, but it has come in very handy over the years. 12th Street in Bryden, that one is almost exclusively TIA and FILO, 50,000 coming out of property taxes. That was an in-house design. So that's basically connecting Warner, where the roundabout is, in front of the high school on 12th, all the way out to Orchards Elementary. So there's really no sidewalk on 12th. And so that's a good candidate for what the bulk of those funds are for. I think we've got the design done. We're just trying to get enough staff time to get that ready to go out to bid. 17th Street sidewalk infill, that was a grant. So what you're seeing there is the grant for $50,000 and then the local match of $3,600 and change. Snake River Avenue, you just spoke. So that one was on the STP queue. We used, since it was already designed, we used that to, I think it was strategic initiatives is a term I found that was used. I don't think that's proper. We got a grant for that one. So it came off the SDP. We didn't get the full grant, but there's still some SDP funds that will backfill it. So the estimate currently is $4.7 million. That local match is at $73,000. And that is, you were talking about Kiwanis Park. This is phase 2. Phase 1 was the roundabout. Phase 2 is roundabout to 11th. So the bulk of Kiwanis, it only will kind of touch the skate park there. It won't get all the way into Kiwanis for this particular phase. 9th Street grade was another SDP fund project. That one is wrapping up. So that was the next project behind Snake River. So that one should move up in the priority. And that one it's just $20,000, some minor right-of-way acquisition, and then you can see the local match for that. Burl Avenue sidewalk was a grant, total for $125,000, and then the local match of roughly $9,200. That's basically from Thane to 14th. There's sidewalk on one side. This would be the sidewalk on the other side. 8th Street bike route, another bike route and ped improvement, another grant. Local match. So those are all projects. You see those 18th or 17th, Burl, 12th Street, well, that was Philo. You see a lot of these, you see a need, they put out the call for projects for a grant. These particular, whether they were close to an elementary school or there was accidents that demonstrated a need for it. We submitted it, we were successful. They were on the CIP, maybe they weren't the highest ranked project, but you turn in what meets the criteria for the grant. And so you can see we're getting some pretty good projects with little or no local dollars going towards it. Bryden Avenue reconstruction, so that's that phase of 4th to 7th. That's only right now, it's just closing out as I spoke maybe it was last month, wrapping up the environmental, transitioning into right-of-way. Typically what's happening, that's $50,000, there would be a local match, and typically the URA picks up the match, so the city submits that and gets the reimbursement, so I put 0 for property taxes, even though we would have some property taxes that pay for it, reimbursement from the URA. The only one that's being requested next year that isn't funded through some form of a grant or allocation is the East Orchards connectivity study. Essentially, I think you've seen a few of these. There was a previous vacation request. You're seeing a lot of development, multiple subdivisions going on out, Powers and 23rd out in that area. And you're finding a lot of these right-of-ways that are inadequate to serve some of these developments. You're seeing some traffic congestion and some interface with the county. And my recommendation is to do a full right-of-way analysis with traffic forecast volumes to see generally, we will be adopting that comprehensive plan through community development here this year. Taking that comprehensive plan, forecasting out, you can't put it down necessarily the canyon of Lindsay Creek, so we're gonna need to route traffic this direction, so we're gonna need to secure additional right-of-way, or where we have right-of-way, don't vacate that, and try and forecast out where our arterials and our collectors will be moving forward. So I think that's definitely needed with the growth patterns that we're experiencing now. So that, in a nutshell, is transportation capital. Any questions?
Councilor Spickelmeyer.
So Director, on this, you mentioned a lot of these were grants, and a lot of them came off of the CIP list.
Yep.
So are there a lot of them that we didn't get grants for?
Oh, yeah. I can't even think of all the lists. I can get you the list of everyone.
That we submitted and didn't get it?
Yeah. One would be a safety grant. So we ended up, I think, we've gotten the grant, I'm trying to think of, there's a safety grant that comes annually, and that one is a little bit easier because they give you the spreadsheet which scores it, so you can input your application and see how you would score, and traditionally there's a line. And so one that we've submitted in the past is a chip seal or a surface treatment for Bryden Canyon. And that's a very large project for that type of grant. So we've looked at breaking it into 2 phases. We've thought about, we put in more match, whatever it is, but we've applied for that one multiple times, and they've tweaked the criteria over the years, and so we're getting farther away from the target, so that we probably won't get that one. But that's a need, that's a significant need, $1 million surface treatment for that. It's not probably gonna happen with that grant. And there's several others. I can get you the list of everything that we apply for, but yeah, we between the grant writer and community development and our contacts with LTAC, there is a cycle, and so we're constantly looking what's out there and kind of following the trend lines of where they want to point the cities to invest in. It's usually ped, bike, safety, things like that. And, you know, it just depends on who you're competing with. Okay, moving forward, stormwater. As I said, I think in the rate discussion, really early on, it went into effect in January 1, collecting fees, so not a lot of capital built into it yet, trying to get the program established, so not a lot of, we have the master plan that's been adopted, so we're gonna basically pick off that master plan. There's a lot of design that needs to be taking place. The only thing that I would say is the top two are design, construction of the CIP projects, which kind of, that's what we're gonna base that off of, and short-lived assets. You see that in a lot of our pipeline, you'll see that in wastewater and water. Short-lived assets are commodities that we use frequently that are, you know, something greater than paint or grease or something like that, but say $5,000, where, you know, if it's a valve, it's a manhole replacement, catch basin, things that are just part of maintaining the system, that we define those as short-lived assets because it's just part of maintaining the system, but it's not large enough to be considered capital. So that's generally where we're gonna be putting our capital investments in the next year. The caveat is we have applied for a very significant grant. I gotta look up the acronym. It's a BRIC grant. It's Federal Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities. So it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $4 to $5 million. And it is addressing that drainage area that we are becoming more familiar with down 21st Street, all the way up. If you remember that storm event, I think it was last summer, all that runoff that went down and down the middle of 21st Street. So it addresses that. And so that would tick off several CIP projects that were identified. So we applied through the state of Idaho. We got very positive feedback when we submitted it down to Boise, and it's been forwarded on to DC. I think what they told us is that project was a top-rated project leaving the state of Idaho. And I can't remember how many billions of dollars they're funding federally. So our hope is if they're gonna fund projects in every state, and we were the top project in the state of Idaho, we have a pretty good chance of getting that. So if that's the case, the local match is gonna be $725,000. And so we may have to go fishing for grants to pay for the match, but that's gonna be a major project, and it's gonna help us significantly on all our CIP projects that were identified in the master plan. So this is kind of how it goes in a lot of these transportation, stormwater. You apply for grants. If you get them, you're successful, that means you're gonna have to alter your capital improvement budgeting moving forward. But that's a good thing, because we're gonna get $4 to $5 million of infrastructure improvements out with outside dollars. Sanitation, as I've said before, sanitation is as large as any of our other enterprise funds, but all of this is contracted services. So we typically carry a much smaller balance on capital reserves because we have less to invest in capital. Well, with that being said, we're kind of in a cycle right now where we're gonna need to invest in some larger capital projects for the facilities that we operate. We've had a backup loader in this year's budget. We haven't spent that yet because we ended up finding out the next item, the transfer station road. We thought it was just a chip seal resurfacing. Turns out the base was bad, and we need to reconstruct the transfer station haul road. So we're kind of in the middle right now of trying to figure out how best to allocate those dollars. Regardless, we need a backup loader and we need a transfer station road reconstruction. And so, like I said, the loader is in this year's budget, but we may move that money into the road design to get it going and move the loader into next year's budget. The bigger project is the transfer station floor. That $75,000 is only for the design. We have had a feasibility analysis to look at what our options are. You can go the sky's the limit for these transfer station floors. One recommendation, which was not a recommendation, one consideration was asphalt. Asphalt. So asphalt would be terrible. It would be dirt cheap, and it would last you a season because all of the pushing and all that stuff on that floor. The high end, you can get fancy additives into the concrete, or you shut down Thursday night, you're down for Friday, you pour on Saturday, it cures on Sunday, and you're open on Monday. Well, you're gonna pay for all those additives and the crews to get that floor done in, whatever it is, 72 hours. Not really realistic for our budget and the use that we have there. So we're probably somewhere in the middle. We've been working with Sunshine, we've been working with our engineer. It's just a matter of getting the capital reserve dollars built up to where we can afford. I'm budgeting, or back in my mind, budgeting about $400,000 for that project, but that's a shot in the dark. So that design going forward in probably 25 would educate our budget for 26 for a new transfer station floor. The only reason I'm sharing this all with you for future budgets is I'm probably looking to do a full rate increase of 2%, just so we can build that cushion for the floor for 26.
Director, I could ask a question. Is that design fee high? It seems high for a capital project when the total repair cost might be what?
Right now, we're at 400,000. So typically, the design fee would be about anywhere from 15 to 25%. And that, we had one thing that we had considered, and we were gonna try and do it this year, but the Hall Road, and we may bundle that road together too, do it all at the same time, is some of those dollars, we may need to do some cores, we may need to do some preliminary demo to get that stuff cleaned out. So yeah, that's probably a little high, but not by too much.
Councilor Spicklemeyer?
So, Director, that road, that isn't the road the public comes into the transfer
It
station?
is.
What is? The trucks come in and out of that too?
Yes, yep, everybody comes down that. I drove it and I didn't, I didn't think it was bad, but then so they went out there and they did some analysis on it and they showed me the map of all the, it's the sub base again that's weak and it's, we could put more asphalt on it, but it's just gonna keep doing what it's gonna do and it's beyond, an overlay is what they told us.
And that's just within the footprint of the transfer station?
Yeah, so off of Wild Dove Way down to basically the Scale House. So it's not a very big run, but it's 2 lanes, full excavation. The actual facility itself is fine. We're actually doing some pavement treatment when we do the pavement treatment for the rest of the city. Because it doesn't get hammered as bad as the road in. Transitioning into wastewater, so this is the collections component, so pipes underground. You'll see the same thing for water, but master plan update. Typically, and we will generally, they'll be in the same budget year. We typically try and stagger these master plans, so it's a heavy lift for the engineers that would be, the private consulting engineers that would be doing it, and the engineers in-house to get all that information. So what we're probably gonna be doing is staggering it, so wastewater, pending approval on this capital plan. Wastewater would come out of the gate immediately, right in October. We would get that out, and then probably January, February, once we got that one kind of underway, we would go back out for the water master plan update. Both of those, as we talked about with the FCS guys, would need to do a rate study analysis based off of the revised or updated CIPs that are generated from these master plans. The previous master plans, both water and wastewater, were very heavy on the plants because the plants were the areas of most need. The updates are gonna be looking at the pipes and conveyance, lift stations, collection stuff. So you'll see a pivot away from the treatment to more of a collections analysis. The Vector truck, that Vector truck's been in there for a couple of years, and there was 2, so we're trying to stagger the replacement of those. The next 2 are basically called out by the existing CIP, so annual pipeline replacement, and then that is collections priority number 2 improvements for a total of $3.2 million. The crew would request a skid steer with the attachment. They don't have a forklift. They do seem to have the need for a skid steer, and it would be great to have a skid steer with forks unloading and loading, the equipment and tools to get off the trucks. The next one is a placeholder. So we've talked a lot about consolidation with facilities. This is one, if you're not familiar, wastewater collections shop is in North Lewiston, kind of by the Super 8 hotel as you're heading out towards the casino. It is a separate standalone, well, there's two separate shops out there, one for the equipment and one for kind of more equipment and offices. There's no reason, it's not tied to anything necessarily as far as the pipes and treatment. So we've had some conversations with the mayor, we've had some conversations with our operators and engineers, and I think everybody's on board of consolidating everything out to the wastewater treatment plant. I think it would generally be a wash. We would sell that facility as is. I mean, it's two shops in North Lewiston. I think there's plenty of demand for industrial shops in that area, and we would construct the equivalent out at the wastewater treatment plant. I think there's a lot of areas, talk about consolidation, there's some areas where we still need storage for the Vector trucks and everything else. We would probably have two separate facilities for, showers and, break rooms, but beyond that, I think there's a lot of areas of co-locating. And right now we have $800,000. I think that's the estimate for the shop, but the revenue and expense, I think, would generally wash out. We may even make some money that would go into the enterprise fund, but that is only a placeholder, and that would probably happen on the back end of this budget year. We're a ways out, we'll get into the treatment plant, but there's already projects that are in the queue right now that we have to complete before we can move on to the next one. The final thing for collections is pick ports. Who doesn't want a pick port? There is a couple force lines that are in the facility. The biggest one being a force line that comes from the casino all the way to our treatment plant. So the casino constructed it, we maintain it, and if you've worked with force lines, pick ports are a way you basically put a Schwab of some sort into the line, you shoot it up there, it treats it. It's actually never been ported or pigged, and so we need to get those installed, and then so we can maintain and clean those. So that's collections.
Councilor Spickmeyer.
So Director, the Vector truck, that's the vacuum trucks, right?
Yep.
So the one, we funded something this year, was that a scoping truck or something?
I'm trying to think back, there was a TV truck that we used. I think that was the one that just showed up, that was a TV truck that we just bought or just received. Delay. Okay, so now going on to the treatment plant and the lift stations. A lot of this, so South Shore pump replacement, I'll just go as quickly as I can through. So South Shore, so the best way to think about it is there's two shores, North Shore and South Shore. South Shore is obviously on the south, so that is on the city side. North Shore is on the treatment plant. And so the wastewater goes to South Shore on the city side, under the river, out to North Shore where it is received and then sent to the wastewater treatment plant. You can actually see South Shore right in this picture. That's South Shore right there receiving it. South Shore is in the need of, I think we've had a couple, there was one emergency issue where we try and keep at least one pump on the shelf. So if any of those pumps, there's 3 pumps, and we always have an extra pump running or on the shelf in case one goes down, because as we've talked, the wastewater does not leave South Shore, it backs up downtown very quickly. And so that is critical that we always have the pumps. And so we have these pumps we're finding very expensive. So we're basically gonna keep budgeting these South Shore pumps for replacement until we can keep up that all of the pumps are either replaced within the last 2 years or on the shelf and ready to go. One item, the trash pump, so that is an 8 or 10 inch trash pump, which is massive. But one thing that we learned during the reservoir rupture was a 6-inch trash pump that we used to empty out the bottom of that reservoir. And it took us, 14 hours. So those trash pumps could help if there was ever a failure on South Shore or any other areas to move a lot of water very quickly. And we have one on call from, I think it's Spokane, But, you know, if, like I said, it would be about 45 minutes before South Shore. If it just shut down, it would be 45 minutes. It's a little bit longer than 45 minutes to get here from Spokane. And so that would be a massive insurance policy for us to just have that, those tools available for if there ever was a failure. South Shore Pump Station, this would go with, there's another one, they put it in acronyms here down below, SSPS, that's South Shore Pump Station hatch door. So those right outside our door here are designed from, I don't even want to venture a guess, 20s, 30s, 40s. It's not necessarily the most safe environment. We don't have a forklift on site. We don't necessarily have a hatch that is conducive for raising a hoist up with a forklift and getting the pump into it. So the guys have requested for safety purposes that we look at redesigning those hatches and doors. The $100,000 is generally a placeholder, but we know it's gonna be 50 to 100. And that goes with the forklift there. Dump truck liner replacement, it's $70,000 for a dump truck liner. That seems crazy. It's gotta be stainless because we haul biosolids with those, and they stick to anything but stainless. So we learned that the hard way, that they don't move without the stainless steel. Wastewater treatment plant water line construct, that's a $1.3 million investment. Essentially, the water line that feeds the plant is undersized. There's been a lot of conversations we've actually had with the port, with what they've talked about with a cruise ship dock that would be behind those bluffs. They need the water pressure, we need the water pressure. We've been having a lot of conversations. It would even loop up to kind of where they're building Northwest Four Slide up there. So we've been having a lot of conversations with them, but this component is mostly us. There's some other components that the port will pick up above the bluff and out towards any future development they have. But this would set up everybody in that area for future success. And then the other two that I don't really just want to speak to real quick are the headworks and the admin building. Those are already in design today, and this would be the construction dollars for next year's budget for the construction of those. So a lot of big dollar components, but these are all built into previous budgets, previous master plans, previous CIPs, and so we're just nothing. You know, the little ones, the trash pumps, the forklifts, those are the ones that are kind of new requests, but the big dollar items said we were gonna build them, and now we're gonna build them. Any more questions regarding wastewater?
Director, I want to ask a question, and I might be way off base here, but didn't we have a discussion not too long ago when we talked about some of the repairs and maintenance that we have to do on our new wastewater plant and our new water plant, that we're having some surprises on how we have to do those and what the costs are?
Yeah.
That they're maybe higher than what we
Yeah.
had.
Yeah, those are being absorbed in the operations side, so they wouldn't show up in the capital, but yeah, I can get you those. I think we did have those.
It's on the operations side,
Yeah.
okay, all right, thank you.
Moving on to water, as I said, wastewater master plan and rate study dovetail right into the master plan first, then the rate study. Again, the bulk of these would be kind of pipeline replacement, looking at areas outside of the treatment plants. Short-lived assets, $500,000, so this is a great picture. These are the valves. So these, you can see the pipe right there, and then you have, this is a T. So you've got, probably looks like that might be another valve there. These fail, so a lot of times you see water spitting up out of the street. It's where this valve has not seated or it's failed. So these are brand new valves, they shouldn't fail, but we have 100-year-old valves in the street. They need to be replaced. That would be a short-lived asset. The one that I spoke to last week is the intake rebuild. Total estimate for that project is $16 million. That's the shortfall we have. So we have is my math right? $9.3 million. through the DEQ's ARPA money, and I think there was another small component, 595 money, I can't remember where it came from, but generally we have almost $10 million in ARPA or grant money, and we're short $6.7 million. If the ARPA dollars are not spent by the end of '26, that's the requirement, they gotta be spent by the end of '26. So if we don't spend them by '26, our shortfall goes up even higher. The reservoir recoding, we have 2 steel reservoirs, one in North Lewiston, one in South High. They are, North Lewiston is not as critical. It's still difficult to take it offline. It's gonna be expensive to come up with a temporary fix on that while it's recoded, but those reservoirs are steel tanks built in the 70s. We did the inspections of those last year, and they show that, they need to be recoded. This estimate is for one, and it probably may not be adequate. And so our intent was they're the same reservoirs, built the same time, to do a design and a quick analysis to which one would be the best to do first, and then roll forward with the next one the next year. The Vector truck that was being requested in wastewater, the new one, water would like to buy the old one. Essentially those, and I think that's the resale price that we were given. We always have new. We have federal requirements. These are lead and copper rules, and so we need to verify some of these service lines going into these buildings or houses. And so right at the main, and that's the only way, or I shouldn't say the only way, the best way to do it is to vector out the soil that you can get a good look at what that service line is made of, because we're looking to demonstrate that there are no lead joints in our system. A vehicle replacement, and then the general pipeline replacement per master plan. That is a low number that will, I guarantee you, go up with a future facility plan. We would like to get that up $1 million, $2 million, whatever it takes, but that is what we're working with today. Questions on water?
Councilor Spickmeyer.
Thank you, Mayor. So Director, on that intake rebuild conversation from last week, so if that is approved, that would mean a significant water fee increase.
Yep, that's my next slide.
Councilor Lidke.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around the used Vector truck and the new cost for wastewater. Is that a for sure number on the new one backing up to wastewater? And then explain to me, we're buying it we got a new one for $635,000. Yeah, I just would love to see why we have to spend that much. Maybe it's a governmental price, the deal. But then we have one that works enough that we're gonna buy for water, right?
So, yeah, so 635,000, I believe that's the quote from, I did not input these numbers myself, but I could go back and I'm assuming that's what the quote was for the new Vector truck. And like everything else, I think the first one we bought was not 635. I think when we started budgeting them, they were 400, and that was pre-COVID, and now we're up to 635. So I don't disagree. That's expensive. Generally, it's the amount of work that needs to be done with, wastewater is going to use theirs on main lines in the right of way, use them daily, and they depend on that more. Whereas, a Vector truck, they're gonna be called out for emergency backups and use that in an emergency situation. The one, for the water department, that is to just go look for lead and copper, so it would not be used as an emergency backup. That is the trade-in value that we were given, and so we looked at it and said, well, if you're only gonna give us $60,000 for that, we can find a home for it and use it.
And follow up.
Councilor Lidke.
when we go out to bid for this, is this one of those things that we use, there's a company that's supposed to give us the best bid? Yeah,
I believe that.
and is that something we have to use, or we just use because we believe that they bring us the best price?
It's been our experience that they give us the best price. I mean, they do the legwork for us. So going out and soliciting the bids, speaking with the manufacturers. I mean, we can do it too to verify it, and we have. But in our conversations with other municipalities, they've had a good run with them. So I don't know. I don't work with them myself, but I know that we've had good luck with them or enjoy using. We like the service that they've provided us.
Thank you.
Councilor Spicklemeyer?
Thank you, Mayor. So Director, in the water capital requests, when we were going through the upper reservoir issue, that wasn't, our fix wasn't just short term, it's.
So you're talking about the liner?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that one, I mean, there's no reason that it can't be a long-term fix, that we've done, the analysis of, the roof, the cover, that was, had dry rot, we couldn't get it to tie in to fix that hole, so that's all gone, so the 100-year-old, whatever you wanna call it, swimming pool, we did the geotech analysis, there was no voids underneath, and then we lined it, and then we put a floating cover on top of that. The floating cover, it has a warranty, I believe, for 12 years. We'll see how it, how the UV, because that's everything around here. It's the UV that ends up, degrading everything that we have from our roofs to our cars. But that doesn't prevent, I mean, it's a couple $100,000, so we could put another floating cover on that. Long term, and that may be part of this master plan, we've got another reservoir, that's high reservoir, we got low reservoir right below it, and each of those was 4.5 million gallons. We've brought them down a little bit because we don't need that much water, but our highest reservoirs is midway in our system. And so, I think, moving forward, it doesn't make sense for us to invest multiple millions of dollars to have water that isn't high enough into the system. And so I think the system coming from the treatment plant, the lines are there, the right-of-way is there, that should be the distribution area and maybe a holding center, but it doesn't necessarily need to be the 9, 10, 12 million gallons of water there. So, because if you look kind of where our community is growing, there's a better place to put 2, 3, 4 million gallons that aren't right there. So, long story, that one's fine for now. Even if we're not, there's nothing that's going to fail in the short term, and even if something failed, it would probably be the cover, and we could replace it.
Councilor Spicklemeyer?
So then, and with that, are you still on time?
Oh yeah, no, somebody's calling me.
So with all the valves and the diversions we did, none of that has to be replaced, everything's fine?
Oh yeah, thanks. Okay, Councilor Spicklemeyer already hit on this, but as we talked about last week, if we were to build everything that was listed in that capital facility plan on the timeline that we said we were going to build it, which is 26, it would require 235% rate increases now and next year. And I don't think that is palatable to many people at all. They ran the numbers and came back and said, if you take that intake out, so you don't have to surcharge your capital so fast, you're looking at a 10% rate increase. A lot of this is driven by the lack of reserves, the backload of capital projects that need to be done, and then just general, the cost of operations, everything has gone up in cost. So that's their latest recommendation was 10% without the intake. If you then say the original recommendation from the original rate study said 5.25 till 2030. If you take that out and you stay to the original plan, my recommendation would still be doing a rate study and a master plan so we know what we're deficient in, and then fund our operations, fund our short-lived assets, and then whatever's left would go into capital. And so I have, I think the highest priority would probably be the reservoir recoatings, but I know we wouldn't have enough money to even do one, but we could probably do an analysis or a deeper dive design to get a more true figure. We would probably not have money for the Vector, even though that's something we would want, defer the pickup, and then we would not do pipeline replacement. So this is really my last slide, but I'm handing this off to you because from here, we're gonna draft the rate resolutions. And so with a span of 0 to 35%, I'd like to have a little bit of feedback from you. As far as, we still have time, I can get more data, I can answer questions, but we're moving forward into drafting the rate resolution so we can get the budget set. So with that, passing it off.
Thank you, Director. Councilor Spicklemeyer.
Thank you. So Director, in continuation of last week's discussion on the intake rebuild, so basically if we don't fund it, we're kicking it down the road, but it gives us time to possibly find funding, as the mayor suggested.
Yeah, we're, lack of a better word, we're burning up the phone lines and emails, and we're really doing the best we can to find the ears out there that will be receptive into finding that let's just call it an even $10 million to find the funding for that.
But it's not a question whether or not we have to have it or not.
Well, we've not had it for 50 years, so we have survived with the temporary intake. We dredged it out this winter, so it should be good for another season or 2 or 3 before it backfills again with sediment. This was identified in going all the way back to the SRF projects. The treatment plant, the well, community drive reservoir, and then the intake, and then some of the stuff, the pipeline replacement. So this is the last one that hasn't been done. The DEQ has been with us through the entire process and has agreed with us. This is the one that wasn't, we needed a treatment plant. We needed all these other things just to get our system up, to snuff. This is one, we have one. So I would hate to we keep talking about kicking the can down the road. This would be kicking the can down the road, but I can't sit here and tell you that the ratepayer should be paying that $6.7 million.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Councilor Klein.
But if we don't do the intake, we lose that $10 million in ARPA funding, or funding in general.
Yeah, that would be, if for whatever reason, the DEQ awarded it to the city directly for the intake. I don't know what the conversation would be with the DEQ to come back and say, we're short $6.7 million, we're not gonna have the funds, would you allow us to spend it on something else? I don't know, because they've given it to us for a purpose. So, if it looks like we're not gonna raise the rates 35%, we cannot get the Corps or any other federal agency to pony up the money, that would be option C, is to go back to the DEQ and say, can we reallocate those dollars? Because as we've identified, there are plenty of water needs. Can we reallocate those funds? And I haven't even gone down that road yet, but that would be the next option C as far as conversations with the state.
Okay, and so since it is an option, can we look into it and see if we can reallocate those funds? Because I would hate to lose that by not being able to pay for it this year.
Yeah, I think we'll be having those conversations soon. If not, we may have already had them and I'm just not aware of them yet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Klein. And I guess, for myself, one of the concerns that I had when I took a tour of the water plant after looking at the intake, was that we were pulling sand into the system. And if that sand gets past those, my understanding is if it gets past those centrifugal filters, it gets into the inside, and then it gets really expensive on us, and we'll spend, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of dollars fixing some very, very expensive pumps. And that's because of the silting and all the problems that go on at the temporary intake. And we were, I think, fairly close to having to maybe shut that down.
Yeah, that is a good point. We're running a completely different facility than we did previously. And so, yeah, this is far more sensitive. I mean, we have sand settling tables and ways to knock that all out, but, you know, the river in the spring runoff gets sediment in it, and we don't run it because it will silt shut. And so if our own intake is not in a location or not constructed in a way where we can, you know, take off that sediment, yeah, it's gonna chew up all of our pumps, all of our sand separating stuff, and then, you know, God forbid, it would be the filter membranes that are very expensive, so that would be an expensive, you know.
How much is one pump to replace that, fix it?
Well, I mean, even the smallest ones are $30,000, and they go up from there. I mean, the raw water ones are less, and they're designed because they're gonna be handling the raw water, which will have sediment, but if it's more sediment than typical, and it's pushing it all the way, I mean, that's, if you've ever, you know, replaced pipe and you look at something, I mean, water will just scour everything, the pipes, the fittings, everything. So the more material, particulates are in it, it's harder on equipment.
Yeah, we lost a pump out there, didn't we?
Mhm.
Yeah. So this is, you talk about a maintenance nightmare, you know, if we don't do something. And the alternative is, as much as we like working with our friends at the Corps, you know, we have to go through a formal consultation process, and that takes a lot of planning and delay and time and money that we have to spend. It's not ideal. So I've been asking the director to push this forward, and I know that'll be the council's decision, but we are, I've met with the congressional folks a couple of times, and we're just shaking the bushes out there looking for money, so. They will not take an earmark. They've all said that we're not gonna do an earmark, and that makes it very challenging for us, because now we have to try to find other ways to get some money, so it's a challenge. Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Councilors, we are now down to Roman numeral 5 on our agenda, budget discussion and direction. This is an opportunity for councilors to ask questions, have discussions, and provide direction to staff related to the fiscal year 2025 budget. And Director Gordon, could I just impose on you, just to give all of us a refresher, just give us a refresher of where we are in the budget calendar, because you gave us a calendar earlier and said, okay, we're gonna have these work sessions. We started out looking at departments versus activity, these kind of things, and now we're going through this. So if you just give us a refresher where we are in the budget calendar and kind of where we're gonna be in another month from now, and what they can do, what we can all do to, you know, give as much feedback as we can in the process so that we can all feel some success.
Yeah, so we are a little more than halfway through our work sessions. We had our first one kind of just on a 101 of how the city funds and funding sources work. We had a discussion on revenues, specifically rates and user fees last week, and then capital projects this week. On June 10th, I believe, we're gonna come and speak to you about personnel, costs that relate to personnel, and then budget requests. So requests that departments have made. Some of those will be verbal presentations. We won't have time to do all the requests, so we'll filter those out. But your packet will include all those requests. And my hope is at that time, we will know what we can fund and what we can't fund, or what the mayor and I might choose to fund versus what we leave unfunded, which then council can communicate to us anything that they would like to see funded versus not funded. The final work session that we have scheduled is in June 24th. And that work work session right now doesn't have a full build out of what we would discuss. So that would be an opportunity for council to kind of direct some additional information that you might want to have shared with you, areas of the budget you might want us to do a deeper dive on, or anything that you would like to see, any additional information that you need to help make your budgeting decisions. That work session will kind of include a wrap-up. We should by then have a draft of our L2 form so we can calculate out what we're looking at. Publishing the budget as far as a property tax increase, so if we are gonna publish with a 3% increase or something less than that, we would probably have a proposal for you at that time of what our plan is as far as the budget that the mayor will present to you for consideration. But we also would have time within that week, if council so chose to even bring back another work session that week. So you could have more than one work session that week if you have more information that you would like to see presented. So we are always looking for at each and every work session, feedback on what more you would like to see. But the next work session that is the plan is personnel cost and budget request.
And so I'm gonna look to Bree as I say this, but, Counselor, as long as we don't, I guess, talk to everyone, but, you could even team up with someone if you wanted to. If you had some ideas on the budget, on how you wanted the budget to look like, talk to one of your fellow council members and put together some kind of a motion, say, here's what we'd suggest, and then you have to sell it to the other counselors. But it might be another way to kind of ask each other what you remember or don't remember about the budget process or the budgets or priorities and these kind of things, and put together a stronger proposal ahead of time, and you can certainly share those with myself or share them with Amy, and we can take a look at them, because it'll provide some feedback early in the process. So just another idea. Councilor Spickmeyer?
So I guess not to, something that's very difficult, but would it be possible to get the information from last year? Or, last year's funding, I know I can dig it up, if I can, if it's like a big deal. So we can kind of do a comparison as we go along, how much we spent last year, and I guess you will, at the end, we'll see it at the last 3 sections, we'll see comparison of 22, 23, 24.
So one of the things we talked about early on in this process is we're kind of developing a new approach as we go. My hope is we can get to council some budget reports near that final work session, definitely prior to publishing and the public hearing, that would lay out what last year's budget was, the current year budget, and then what's being proposed for 25, so you can kind of see on a department level and activities within those departments, how the budget has grown. It would allow you to compare what's being proposed for 25 to the current year budget and even the prior year. So that is something that we are working on internally, is how we can present that information, summarize it to a level that you're not getting a 400-page budget report, but expand it enough that it's got enough content for you to really see what those sections are, where those costs really lie.
Councilor Forsman?
So I'm trying to find that slide. Hang on, help me out here. Well, here, so we had the 1.256 from the community park that we allotted as far as that budget goes. Is this kind of a common thing where we set money aside and then projects take just a while to finally get finished up? Or is there projects that we have readily available that that's already kind of like I'm trying to figure out how to word this. Projects that we know could get done within the fiscal year. We allot the money for at least the next fiscal year. Whereas I'm seeing a lot of these projects that we're gonna put money away for this fiscal year, but it's not even gonna get done until a year or 2 years from now. Is there
Let me, okay, so one thing, some thoughts I had when Tim was presenting for facilities is, one thing that's important for council to know is every year there is, a property improvement budget that is allocated. For many years, that amount was less than $200,000. So that amount stays within the budget as part of our tax base. It's been an ongoing funded appropriation for many years. The last couple of years, the mayor has dedicated an additional $250,000 to that account to help tackle some deferred maintenance issues. That $250,000 we've been funding from general fund reserves. So I believe we will try to continue that within the 25 budget. Then within the general fund is that assigned building fund. Late last summer, you guys were receiving these big overwhelming list of deferred maintenance items that the city had. So what we had chose to do in the 24 budget is just fully appropriate what you had available in that assigned building fund. And then council could decide throughout the year if they wanted to utilize any of those funds to address bigger, larger projects. That is an option that we can do this year, is we can take what is projected to be left in that fund and fully appropriate it out so that you could use it towards community park, or you could use it towards other projects, or a combination. The way I had understood Director Barker's presentation is they have that long list of deferred maintenance items, and that list hasn't gone away. But what they're, kind of where they're putting a pause is we're waiting to see what Clearwater Financial returns to us for potential future plans of facilities and potentially consolidating some. So not wanting to get too aggressive with that list, maybe if we would potentially be surplusing properties. Did I answer your question?
A little bit. I'm kind of too looking, like if departments came together and they presented, they're kind of like when you're applying for a grant, right? You're checking boxes of how are you, like, who checks the most boxes, right? So if we have all these departments that are coming and needing funds, what I'm thinking is, are they close to being able to actually use those funds, or are they still a year out or 2 year out, but they're trying to allocate that money? Like, do we have projects that we could do and that are easy enough to do and get done so that the public is actually seeing these get done within the year instead of waiting, allocating funds that's not gonna be spent for another 2 years?
Yeah.
Kind of like categorizing those that way.
So when the departments are making their request for projects, what they would like where they need some additional funding, they are answering specific questions for us on that form. Part of it is the benefits of funding the project, the consequence of not funding it, referencing where it is identified in their strategic plan, if they have any other funding sources available for those projects, or if they have no known funding sources. So those are all things that the mayor and I will be looking at when we're looking at what we can fund in the budget versus not funding. I'm not aware of any projects that would take multiple years to fund other than what was presented to you today.
Okay. Most everything's gonna be within probably, aside from transportation, but most of those will be within this year or the following year, or we're planning for the following year.
Correct.
Okay. I'm okay.
I'll move it.
Councilors, questions? Thank you, Amy. Okay, we'll save them to a later date, but please call, email anytime so we can get the best product we can for budget purposes. Unfinished and new business, Roman numeral 6, item A, city councilor comments. Comments shall not be related to an item currently before the council or an item that may come before the council in the foreseeable future, and shall be limited to comments, not discussion. Okay, we'll keep moving. Mayor comments, I'm just gonna ask Director Johnson to give us, one more time, give us an announcement about this Thursday. Make sure the public shows up.
Come on out, Thursday at the fairgrounds, we have Public Works Day, we have, City of Lewiston.
Toilets.
What's that?
Exploding toilets.
Yeah, exploding toilets, we have equipment, we have Clearwater Compost, I believe Lloyd, a couple other local, I'm gonna forget a bunch of them, but we have, it's geared for kids. So we've reached out with the area schools, and they come, it's usually second, third grade, but it's open to the public, we'd love, I've already had multiple people come tell me they're bringing their kids that are around, preschool age, bringing them out there, so. It's at the fairgrounds, you can't miss us, it's free, we have all kinds of different things for educating the kids and the parents, different stations to go through, some of them are very exciting, like the exploding toilet, some of them are more education, but, we'd love to have anybody stop on by and take a look at what we do in Public Works, so 9 to about 2 p.m. is the hours.
Can I ask a question?
This is a big deal. Counselor Forsman.
Just a quick question. How many schools, do we get any Lewiston school districts signing up to go?
It's changed, I mean, when we had COVID, we didn't do it for 2 years, and so we've been kind of restarting. Holy Family, because it's right there, they come right over, so they're, all of their, classes, I mean, with the age group, they all go. We send flyers to all of the school districts. Last year, for some reason, Lewiston was less, last year it was Holy Family and Asotin. And so, but we send it Clarkston, Asotin, All Saints, Holy Family. I guess I said All Saints, they always give me a hard time. All Saints, Holy Family, and then the Lewiston School District, Clarkston.
Do we know who's coming this year?
We do have a head count, roughly. We've topped out 600 to 700 kids. Last year we were down a little bit, so we were around 450, but we expect, and there's always those that don't RSVP, but that's okay. Just gets a little crowded.
The Lewiston School District this year?
I haven't seen the
roster.
official final RSVP yet, but,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Director. Wait, I'm gonna do this, Lauren, pardon me, but one of our new employees is with us here today. Lauren, would you mind just telling the council who you are and what you're gonna do for the city? We welcome you. Yeah, I couldn't resist, but thank you, since I didn't know who she was.
Hi, Council. My name is Laura Holla, and I am the new Financial Functions Coordinator for Public Works Department. And I think the scope of my job at this point is to kind of help them with their contracts and the budgeting process and kind of fill that role and piece between purchasing and the City Hall portion, so.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you for being here. Councilors, if there's no further business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you. Second. It's been moved by Councilor Schroeder, second by Councilor Spickmeyer to adjourn. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same
Aye.
sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Councilor Klein. Thank you, Council. We are adjourned.